Most people don't realize that the core structure of most eating recommendations actually work against us. That's right, they literally work against us. And we're going to take a look at that in this video. Exactly what is it about these systems that's making it basically so difficult for us to manage our eating and weight. At the heart of almost every eating guideline is a way to categorize food that will allegedly make it easier for you to eat healthy and to avoid foods that are going to compromise your health. And so we end up seeing a lot of good food, bad food systems. They come with so many different words: healthy, unhealthy foods, okay foods, not okay foods, foods that are allowed, foods that are not allowed, should be avoided, legal and illegal foods, which I believe was used by Weight Watchers. And then we also have the red light, green light foods. You can eat the green light foods and not the red light foods. This is for kids usually. And then they also have the yellow light foods with the caution foods. You have to be cautious about them, be careful with them. And so we end up with the foods that we can eat and then the foods that should be avoided. And what happens is foods that typically are kind of neutral in a sense start shifting, and the good food takes on increased significance. The good food becomes more important, the more valued food. These are the good foods. This is your brown rice, your broccoli, and your broiled fish right here. These foods, the bad foods, need to get pushed away. These are the French fries, the pizzas, the candy, or whatever. And so they get pushed down and they are valued less. They're not as good. Okay? So it's really simple. All you have to do is eat the good foods and then avoid the bad foods. No problem. It's really simple, and it sounds simple, doesn't it? Oh, I just eat these foods and avoid those foods, and then I can achieve all my goals. This is wonderful. Let me do it. Let me do it. But let's take a look at what happens when you start doing and implementing this food system. The first thing you must do is decide which foods you're going to avoid. Which are the bad foods? Okay, so now you have to learn this list of foods, and you know that they're different based on what system you pick. We've got that big old bad potato there and the corn. Well, if you're low carb, you're going to avoid that. But guess what? Some programs say that that carrot has too much carb in it, so you need to avoid the carrot and the beets. So they have too much carb. So each program you have to learn has these foods that you must focus on and in order to be able to avoid them. And now you're on the lookout for these foods. Now you start having to pay attention. Where are these foods in my life? Here we have a fabulous natural food restaurant. No MSG, no preservatives, low salt, no sugar, no caffeine, high fiber. However, when doused in arugula, when doused in oil, arugula top can be taboo at health food restaurants. This means that even those foods that are in this list, the good list, could be demoted depending on how they're cooked. So now not only do we have to pay attention to the food, we have to start monitoring, well, how is it cooked? What's in there? Is there oil in there? I can't have it if there's oil in there. So the good food list isn't quite as simple as it started out being. But now we have to start becoming hyper vigilant. We have to start monitoring our environment for these foods that we're now going to avoid. Let's take an example. For instance, let's just say that you decided you're going to avoid sugar. So now what do? You have to start looking out for sugar, don't you? You start having to pay attention to where is the sugar in your environment. And now you start your eagle eye about the sugar, and so you walk in on somebody cooking some food. Well, did you add sugar to that? How much sugar did you add to that? Well, you might be able to add stevia and take out the sugar. Why don't you take out the sugar, and then we can add stevia, and then it will be better. I was just making some muffins. Okay, so one person is just making some muffins, and this other person is completely focused on, oh my God, how much sugar does it have in it? I can't eat it. Well, let's fix it without the sugar. So the sugar's on the mind. Sugar is on the brain. When you go grocery shopping, what are you going to be looking for? You're going to be looking for the sugar, right? the sugar. You're going to be like trying to find the sugar in the packages so that you can avoid it. So what does that mean that you go into the grocery store looking for? You're looking for sugar so you can avoid it. Okay? You're on the hunt. And the natural sugar myth. Hidden sugar lurking in shocking places. Just like that natural food restaurant. Here we are finding out that just because a food is natural doesn't mean it's not going to be on this list, on the bad list, okay? So even natural foods, is sugar, is, you know, these foods that we want to avoid is lurking in places. So we have to even be more vigilant. We have, you know, we got to get our binoculars out. We've got to be paying attention all the time. Now let's take this away from the more emotionally charged environment of, say, sugar. Let's just say that I'm going to tell you that it has been discovered the food that is actually causing all the problems with health, all the concerns about weight, all of that has been narrowed down to one food, and you won't believe what it is. I will tell you. I'm going to tell you. It's broccoli. Okay, broccoli. No, stay with me. Broccoli, okay? What they've discovered about broccoli is that somehow it goes through a chemical transformation when you eat it. And it somehow, and they haven't quite figured it out yet, but somehow kind of attaches itself to your intestinal walls, to the foods that come through, chemically altering that food to make it negatively impact your health, to perhaps cause weight gain. So this is a food that should be avoided. So you need to start avoiding broccoli. Okay? So now go forth and avoid broccoli. What's the first thing you're going to start looking for? Broccoli. You're going to be looking for broccoli. You go to a salad bar, you're going to say, is there broccoli in that salad bar? You are going to start noticing what people cook. And you're going to be saying, you know what, let's get rid of the broccoli. We're taking the broccoli out of this dish. Broccoli is a no-go. I know you don't believe it, but it's true. You shouldn't be eating broccoli. I'm taking it out of this dish. Okay? So you're focused on the very thing you're avoiding. You go to a restaurant. What are you looking at on the menu? Oh, yeah, this looks like a little pasta dish, but I'm avoiding the broccoli now. So does it have broccoli in it? If so, I can't eat it. I got to find something else. And before you know it, it feels like broccoli is everywhere. Just like kind of sugar is kind of everywhere. You're going to see broccoli in a lot of different places, okay? Even where it's not supposed to show up, like on this turkey. Like, why is there broccoli here? There's more broccoli. There's broccoli everywhere. All I'm trying to do is to avoid it. Just this little simple thing is avoid it. And the very thing that you were trying to do has become more cognizant, more on your mind because you're trying to avoid it. And because this food is everywhere, now you have to create some safety around it. You have to start being careful. And safety is everywhere. You might not even realize it. Safety is about not bringing that food into your house. Oh, I'm not going to bring that food into my house because if I do, I'm going to eat it all. So for safety's sake, I'm going to keep it out of my house. Safety's sake is, for instance, going on a picnic and saying, oh, bring the chips. Let's bring some chips. But you know what? Let's not bring them home. Well, if there's any leftover, we'll just throw them away. It's no problem. So, well, there probably won't be any leftovers because I'll just eat them all because I know we're going to throw them out because they're bad. So I don't want to bring them home. So safety, I'm only going to have them certain places. You may even avoid certain restaurants or certain events because you know what food is going to be there. That's kind of getting even more extreme safety. Now, one aspect of safety that most people don't even realize is the way food is sold in portion sizes and how we use that. For instance, like this, a lot of the foods are served like little bars like this in pre-portion sizes, or this rice pudding cup, right? Now, it's interesting because even though men are subjected to this whole system and succumb to it at times, who is it really directed at? Who are these little portions directed at? More often than not, women, right? I mean, can you imagine saying, here, husband, here's your dessert, here's your little pudding cup. And yet a woman would be very excited about having a little one portion thing. These are safeties. These are safeties. If you watch food commercials, you will almost always see a woman with a portioned out food. And if it's a guy, he's more likely to have a bunch of food in front of him, this quantity of food. So these are all little ways that we end up creating safety, basically because we have this good food, bad food system. And it becomes more and more difficult to negotiate. Fear of food. Butter isn't poison, and death by chocolate is extremely rare. So why are people afraid of food? Indeed, this whole system thing contributes to it. And when you start eating those bad foods, the foods that you're supposed to avoid, you end up feeling guilty. You feel bad about it. Sometimes people end up hiding, and they don't want other people to see what they're eating, so they do it in private when others are not around. Or they may only eat certain foods. They refuse to eat maybe cake or things like that in front of other people. But when they're alone, that's when they'll do it. And then they feel bad about it and they feel guilty. And food guilt is rampant. And we eat every day. What does that say about our mental and physical health, right? Stress, we all know that stress impacts health negatively. So what is it like when we go through life completely stressed out about our eating? Is it good? Is it bad? Should I eat it? Oh my God, I ate it. I can't, I got to hide when I eat it. Even just talking to you about it right now, I'm feeling stressed out. And so the very system that we develop to eat the good foods and avoid the bad foods so that we can be healthier is backfiring. And now we're doubled down with additional stress that is also negatively adding to not good health. Now, when you decide a food is good or bad based on somebody else's idea, I will tell you what you should eat. I will tell you what is bad. And I'm going to decide on this for you. When somebody does that, you end up missing, and you're listening to it, you miss an excellent opportunity for body feedback. The body is constantly sending us rich messages about, oh, that was nice. Oh, that wasn't so good. And people will mistake. Sometimes a client will say to me, well, I felt disgusting when I ate that food. That's the feedback. And I'm like, no, that's not actually feedback. That's actually your mind telling you that you felt disgusted. Okay? That's a thought. The body is never like, I'm disgusted. That's an emotion. The body's like, I don't feel so good. Uncomfortable. At the extreme, it's like, oh, I gotta throw up, when you're sick. But, and you might think, oh, that's disgusting that I threw up. But the body doesn't think in terms of judgment. The body just is. The body's uncomfortable or the body's comfortable. Okay? When you judge your food, you don't get to tune in to those subtle things that say that it's all okay or it's quite not okay. And you're not listening to those signals because you already know. You know because you have the good food, bad food list. And you become closed off to the richness and the wisdom of your body. And then it becomes very difficult to learn about what you really need and how you really need to feed yourself. Now, it's hard to think about this in terms of food. So let's just say that you're going to have a visitor tomorrow. I happen to know this. You're going to have a visitor tomorrow. And I have to tell you something about the visitor, but I do not want this to impact your thoughts about this visitor. Okay, so I really want you just to be open-minded and not have any preconceived ideas when you get this visitor. Okay, but let me just tell you about this visitor. They just got out of prison, and they murdered their entire family. I know. And yes, it's actually true. It happened. Yeah, he actually did that, and he got off on a technicality. But I'm sure he's changed. I'm sure that he's not the same person, and so I really want you to be able to just forget about what I just said, and just go from your heart and see what your heart says. How many of you would be able to do that? I wouldn't. I would be like, oh my God, he's a murderer. Oh my God, he's a murderer. So I'll be all caught up in that. My head will be like, ah, and I won't even be able to think like, oh, am I comfortable around this person? Is there any telltale signs that he would be friendly or not friendly or, a bad person? No, I wouldn't get any of those because my head would be going crazy, right? Preconceived. I already told you he was a bad person. And I scared you a little bit with it, which is what we do with food, right? This is a bad food, don't eat it or you will die, basically. And so you don't get to be open-minded anymore, and you're not learning, and you're not like able to take away what the body is trying to communicate, and it makes it harder to hear your hunger and your fullness signals because you already know that food is supposed to fill me up. That food is not supposed to fill me up. So many times clients say to me, well, I ate a piece of cake, but I didn't get full at all. I mean, like I couldn't even tell I'd eaten anything. And I'm thinking, well, that's 300 calories or so of fuel. It's like you put, that much fuel into your gas tank. You would expect the gas gauge to go up slightly, right? Right? Even if it's bad gas, even if you put diesel in by mistake, it will go up, right? So even if you're eating cake, the fuel gauge will go up. And if you don't feel it going up, it's because your mind has told you, those calories don't count. They don't fill me up. They're not good calories. They don't count. And the only thing that I can really feel full on is, a nice, good meal. And then you're missing out. Then you're missing out on all the wonderful things that your wise body could be telling you because you have this good food, bad food system in your head. Now let's take a look. The good food, bad food systems makes forbidden and bad foods more appealing. Okay, because here's what happens when you've got the good food up here and the bad food down here, and you're like, oh, simple system, I just won't eat that. And you're up here doing great with your broccoli and your brown rice or whatever. And then as you're doing that, you're kind of looking down here and you're going, oh, that looks good. And then the person at the table is like, I think I'll have a piece of cake. And you're like, oh, cake, I can't have cake. I can't have cake. Cake is bad for you. I won't eat cake. It's going to ruin my program. I can't have it. Oh, but doesn't it look good? I really like it when I have it. No, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. But yes, I do. What's just happened with that? The good food becomes less and less valuable. And guess what becomes more valuable? The bad food. It actually becomes more appealing. It becomes forbidden, and so now it's almost like you want it more because it becomes more appealing. So this system turns into this. Have you ever experienced that? Have you ever experienced like just a longing for a sweet that you can't have? That's a system. And what we've seen is we end up thinking more about these bad foods because we're trying to avoid them. We have to pay attention to them. They're on our brain more often. They're like floating around. Sugar, 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 sugar. Okay, the very thing we want to avoid. We're thinking about it all the time. And all this ends up increasing our attraction to that food and then makes us feel bad when we eat those foods, which then, of course, triggers us to probably eat even more of those same bad foods. And by the way, every time I say good or bad foods, I want air quotes. Okay, so imagine I'm doing air quotes every single time. The result of all this is now you are more interested in the bad foods, you're craving the bad foods, and you end up eating more of them. Unless you're really good at white knuckling it. If you're really good at white knuckling it, then you can get through and you can follow the program, okay. But to me, that seems kind of stressful. If you're like, I'm eating really well, look at me, right? What is the level of tension and stress you hold in your body in order to be able to follow that system? Not so healthy. Ziggy says, warning, excessive label reading could be harmful to your peace of mind. I agree. If you're constantly reading labels and looking for all this stuff that's bad and that you want to avoid, whoa, stressful. And there we are, focused more on the very thing that we're trying to avoid because of the good food, bad food system. Now, you may wonder, well, Karen, nutrition education, can't you just tell a person like, oh, this is a food that would be health enhancing, you should be eating this, and that it would be okay? In my experience, the answer to that is, yeah, you can. And when I do basic nutrition education with somebody, hey, you could use a little bit more protein, or hey, why don't you try a little bit of more citrus fruit for some vitamin C? When I do that, it's with a client who is not measuring their self-esteem with their food. They've gotten rid of this good food, bad food thing. I'm good because I eat good. Oh, I feel so good about myself. Or, oh, I feel bad. I feel bad because I've eaten. Your self-esteem is wrapped up in your food. What I want is them to be neutral, so your self-esteem is no longer wrapped up there. And if I have a client that essentially is kind of like this, Karen, I have achieved such wonderfulness in my life. I'm a kind person, a lot of love in my life. Everything's really good. I have this level of wonderfulness that I'm just so thrilled to have achieved. But is it possible that I could be a little bit more wonderful? And so I'm here to ask you, is there anything that I might do with my food that'll just maybe enhance my health a little bit or something? I'm so wonderful that, I don't really have to do this, but my health, let me see. I'm going to get you some advice from you. And if somebody is just like so self-esteem not involved with their food, changing your food becomes really easy. Yeah, here, why don't you do a little of this and a little of that? And they're like, okay. And then they'll come back like, I didn't do it. But they don't feel bad about it. They're like, help me to figure it out. It's not an issue, right? But when your self-esteem is caught up with your food, and which is so often becomes when you have a good food, bad food system, it becomes very difficult to be able to change your food without the food becoming part and parcel to how I feel good about myself and how I feel bad about myself. So the good news is it is absolutely possible to have a wonderful, beautiful, healthy diet without this good food, bad food system. And tapping into your own inner wisdom and your own eating wisdom is part of that process. And for right now, we're going to just talk about what it is we need to let go of. Because we don't talk about that often enough. What is it we need to let go of in order to get on the path that we want to be on with eating, food, and weight? So I will see you in the next module.